Cameron Brady.
Brett Huntley. David Dungy. John Chen. Tom Brokaw.
A deadly day in Iraq while 28 American families received the worst possible news after a brutal weekend. Tonight we'll debut our new NBC News poll on the president, Congress, and the war, and our talk with the woman who wants to become the second President Clinton. The new numbers are in on spam. It's making a roaring comeback, doubling in just a year, and what to do about it. And a wounded soldier coming home, but this time in this war, a welcome he didn't get 40 years ago.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. Tomorrow night, when the president looks out at both houses of Congress during his State of the Union address, he will count on support mostly from those on the Republican side of the aisle. And as of this afternoon, that just got tougher. Senator John Warner, a prominent Republican senator from Virginia, staunch on defense, today came out against the president, pushing a resolution that goes against the American troop increase. Other Republicans have lined up against it as well. Then there are the numbers. Over 100 killed today, most in twin bombings in a Baghdad market, after a weekend that saw 28 American service members killed in active duty in Iraq. Today's bombings in Iraq were carried out to inflict maximum damage, and they did, both physically and politically. We begin in Baghdad tonight with NBC's Mike Betcher. Mike, good evening.
Hi, Brian. I have to tell you, this violence provides a grim backdrop as U.S. troops arrive here, more reinforcements, and they find that they are in the middle of a civil war.
The sounds of sirens pierce the air as ambulances rush the dying and wounded to Al-Kindi Hospital. Just after noon, 2 car bombs, police say packed with over 400 pounds of explosives, ripped through the Bab al-Sharqi markets in central Baghdad. Nicknamed the Thieves Market, the stalls were filled with second-hand clothes and DVDs, a place where many Shiites come to shop. Al-Kindi Hospital looked like a war zone, every ward filled with the wounded. Grieving families looking for missing relatives, and so many dead, a makeshift morgue was set up outside. Those who did this are not men. No, they are not. They are cowards, said a survivor. And as U.S. troops from the 82nd Airborne arrived to bolster Iraqi security forces, there are more questions after a deadly weekend for American troops about whether U.S. soldiers will be more vulnerable if the Iraqis take the lead in the new war plan. On Saturday, a U.S. Civil Affairs team was meeting with Iraqi officials in Karbala's provincial headquarters, discussing security plans for a Shiite religious festival. Suddenly, a convoy of 7 white SUVs raced into the compound. The vehicles were waved through an Iraqi police checkpoint. A policeman said the men inside the SUVs were wearing American uniforms and flashing American identity cards. As the gunmen entered the building, they set off stun grenades and opened fire with automatic weapons, killing at least 5 Americans. Iraqi officials at the meeting were not harmed. The U.S. military says the Karbala ambush was carried out by an illegal militia.
I would argue, don't ever take all the combat brigades out of there, or we'll be enormously vulnerable to losing not 5 soldiers, but 5,000 logistic soldiers some night.
The first of these new arrivals are coming in. They're from the 82nd Airborne. Brian?
Mike Betcher in Baghdad tonight. Thank you, Mike. And returning to domestic politics, just in the space of this past weekend, 3 more candidates entered the race for president. One of them has lived in the White House before. Our report on all of it tonight from NBC's David Gregory.
A full year before the first vote is cast, and there are already 9 Democrats vying for the White House. On the Republican side, another 9 candidates have taken the first step toward an official run. A crowded field off to a breathtakingly early start.
I'm in to win, and that's what I intend to do.
Experts say the rush is for campaign cash, the first test of a candidate's viability.
we may see in the first quarter of 2007 at least 4 candidates, 2 in each party, raise the kind of sums that George W. Bush ran and broke records with in the year 2000.
Trying to temper the Obama buzz created by his announcement last week, Senator Hillary Clinton has burst onto the campaign field. Her online announcement followed a highly choreographed and newly minted anti-war stance. And now a second round of TV interviews, web chats, and appearances meant to highlight her agenda, including health care.
It is simply wrong for any child in America to go without health insurance.
The early emphasis is on the softer side of Mrs. Clinton.
Let's chat.
What advisors say is a concerted attempt to firm up support among women. All of this, and it's only January of 2007. One Democrat said today the party's nominee will likely be known by early next year, making for an unusually long and bruising general election campaign. The first proving ground, Iowa, where locals say voters like to be courted.
They like to have the candidates come into their living rooms, tell them what they stand for.
In a race with standing room only, and, so it seems, little time to spare. David Gregory, NBC News, New York.
And against this political backdrop tonight, we unveil the new numbers from a brand new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. With us to do that, our Washington Bureau Chief, Tim Russert. Tim, before we get to that, let's talk about this Clinton candidacy. She was here in this studio today. We'll air a bit of that later on in the broadcast. What should people know that they don't already know about this candidacy?
Well, Brian, she'll be the front runner because of the money, the machine, her visibility, her high poll numbers at a national perspective. But we cannot forget that this race will be decided in Iowa, Nevada, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, states that it could be anti-war, pro-labor, high African-American turnout like in South Carolina. And in those 4 states, the race with Barack Obama and John Edwards and Hillary Clinton is very competitive. She has not yet been anointed, nor will she be. This will be a toughly fought primary battle.
And Tim, she said again today, she is running because of the direction of the country, because of this president. That gets us to the numbers. Where is this president right now?
Not doing well, Brian. Here's the all-important favorable rating for the president. Only 35% approve of his performance as president, 60 disapprove. And look at this, Brian. Are his numbers a short-term setback, 25%, a long-term setback, 65%, and that includes 40% of Republicans say it's long-term difficulties for President Bush.
And Tim, when you ask the voters who would they have setting the tone?
Brian, it's very clear. Bush, 22%, Congress, 57%. They want congressional leadership on the issues confronting the nation.
And of course, Tim, our lead story again tonight, the central issue of our times. We keep going back to Iraq.
Is it ever, Brian? When the U.S. leaves Iraq, will there be a stable government? 27% of Americans say yes. No stable government, 65%, including 42% of Republicans. And look at this, Brian. If Congress opposes sending the troops, should the president listen to Congress? 2 out of 3 Americans say, listen to Congress, do not send more troops. But then this, should Congress cut off funding? 41% say yes. 52% say no, do not cut off funding for the war, and that includes half the independent voters, a third of Democrats. People still do not want to cut off funding for the war in Iraq.
Tim Russert in Washington tonight. Tim, we'll see you tomorrow there for the State of the Union. Thanks as always. This weekend at the University of Georgia, former President Jimmy Carter and many members of his administration gathered for a conference to mark the 30th anniversary of Carter's inauguration. The Middle East, as you might imagine, was a big topic, and while Mr. Carter was forced to repeatedly defend his controversial new book on the Israelis and the Palestinians, I asked a question of the president during one session which led to this. Details that have never before been disclosed about the moment Carter learned that Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was pulling out and leaving halfway through the 1978 Camp David peace talks.
I went in and changed my clothes. I took off my blue jeans and my sports shirt, and I put on a suit and a tie. And I went in the back room, and I knelt down and prayed. And I asked God to help me. And then I walked over to Sadat's cabin. And he had all of his suitcases out in front, and all of his aides were there ready to load the suitcases on the helicopter. And I went in to his room, and I told everybody else to get out. And Sadat and I stood with our noses almost touching. And I told him that he had betrayed me and betrayed his own people. And that if he left, our friendship was severed forever. And the proper relationship between the United States and Egypt would be dealt a severe blow. And he went over in a corner by himself, and he came back and said, "I'm staying."
Thank you, Mr. President. Recalling the moment the Camp David talks almost collapsed, former President Jimmy Carter at this weekend's conference in Athens, Georgia. When NBC Nightly News continues after a break this Monday night, NBC News In Depth. More on politics, our conversation here with the New York senator who wants to be president. And later, our special series of reports coming home. Two wars, two very different versions of welcome back for the same veteran.
It was so frustrating, like a mystery I couldn't solve. Night after night, strange sensations in my legs kept me from falling asleep. So I had to get up and move when all I wanted to do was rest. I had restless leg syndrome. My doctor confirmed it. He said with restless leg syndrome, the symptoms usually get worse at night or in the evening when it's time to relax. And then he said something else. Requip. He said Requip would help relieve those RLS symptoms that kept me from getting to sleep. He told me what to watch for, that Requip may cause you to fall asleep or feel very sleepy during normal activities such as driving, or to faint or feel dizzy when you stand up. Tell your doctor if you experience these problems, or if you drink alcohol or are taking medicines that make you drowsy. Side effects include nausea, drowsiness, vomiting, and dizziness. Most patients were not bothered enough to stop taking Requip. Thanks to Requip, the RLS mystery is not keeping me up anymore. Ask your doctor if Requip can help put your RLS to rest.
What is your cat dreaming about? Same thing every cat dreams about. Great flavor combinations for dry food. Discover the dry food cats have dreamed about. Friskies with multi-flavored combo pieces. Chicken and turkey flavored combos, salmon and chicken flavored combos, and tuna and salmon flavored combos. Multi-flavored bites mean cats get more out of life. Try Friskies dry foods with multi-flavored combos. Friskies for more.
AARP is an organization for people who have birthdays. That's because what we do for all. Join us in championing your future and the future of every generation.
Dateline Tuesday, a death led right way. A woman in disguise. Is a cell phone the key to the truth? A Dateline Home TV exclusive. NBC Tuesday, 8/7 Central.
NBC News In Depth tonight. A woman who lived in the White House for 8 years. She is trying to become the second U.S. president named Clinton. Earlier today, New York Senator and former First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton came here as part of a big media tour to talk about her announcement this weekend that she's in the race for president to win it. This is not exactly how or when you plan to announce this. How else are you going to have to adjust to counter the presence of this Obama campaign, which is a surprise?
Well, you know, Brian, this is exactly how I intended to do this. Once I made up my mind that I was going to contest for the presidential nomination of my party, I wanted to do it on the web. I wanted to do it before the President's State of the Union because I wanted to draw the contrast between what we've seen over the last 6 years and the kind of leadership and experience that I would bring to the office.
So you had always planned to announce before the President's State of the Union address?
That was our plan, yes.
What does the Obama factor do to the Clinton campaign?
Well, it makes everything even more exciting. I've been through presidential campaigns, and this is going to be one of the best we've had in a long time because there is no sitting vice president, there's no clear heir apparent. We have a terrific, talented field on the Democratic side, and obviously Barack is just a phenomenally accomplished senator and person who's going to be very effective, as are a number of my other competitors. I know everybody, and they bring a lot of different skills and talents to this field, and I'm looking forward to the election.
Is it any kind of a burden for you, Senator, that so many opinions are pre-formed? Americans know Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Well, as someone close to me once said, I'm probably the most famous person you don't really know, and I'm going to spend my time doing what I've done in New York, which is going and meeting with groups of people and talking about what I value, my background, my incredibly committed views about what we should be doing in our country, and let people make their own judgments, because I heard the very same kinds of comments when I started running here in New York, that people, thought they'd already made up their minds about me, and I just wanted a fair shot. I wanted people to judge me for who I really am and what I really believe, and I think I can do well if I get that opportunity.
Well, you're one of the few alive who has seen exactly the journey that is ahead of you. I don't know if that helps or hurts.
It helps a lot. I don't think I'll have too many surprises coming forward.
Our conversation in this room earlier with Senator and now candidate Hillary Rodham Clinton earlier today. When NBC Nightly News continues after another break, just when you thought it was safe to go back to your email, spam has come roaring back in a big way.
The word is prestidigitation.
Can you use it in a sentence, please?
The magician was a master of prestidigitation.
Can I switch words?
The word is zoo.
Zoo.
If only it was easy to switch to something better. Fortunately, you can call or just bring in your prescription bottle and we'll switch your prescription to Walgreens for you. It's that easy.
A lot of people have trouble sleeping, but they don't all have the same trouble. Some can turn off and stay awake for hours. Others turn off right away, but wake up again later. Many people have both problems. That's why people are asking their doctors for controlled release formula Ambien CR, the latest Ambien. It's the only one with 2 layers that work differently. One dissolves quickly to help you fall asleep fast. The other dissolves slowly to help you stay asleep. Ambien CR is a treatment option you and your doctor can consider along with lifestyle changes and can be taken for as long as your doctor recommends. Until you know how Ambien CR will affect you, you shouldn't drive or operate machinery. Be sure you're able to devote 7 to 8 hours to sleep before being active again. Side effects may include next-day drowsiness, dizziness, and headache. It's non-narcotic. However, like most sleep medicines, it has some risk of dependency. Don't take it with alcohol. A good night's sleep shouldn't be an on-off thing. Falling asleep and staying asleep can make a big difference. So ask your doctor about controlled release formula Ambien CR. Remember, CR.
Last winter I had a heart attack. I believe Bayer saved my life. The doctor said, take the Bayer now. If I didn't have it, I might not be here. And then who'd take the spider out of the bathtub?
Genuine Bayer aspirin. Painkiller, lifesaver.
I expect to stick around for a while.
Bayer. Expect wonders.
Help! Help! I'm hurt and can't work. I need help to pay my rent, car payment, and electric bill.
You! Do something!
My hero.
Aflac. Ask about it at work.
Tomorrow on Today, instead of just spending money at the mall,
It's amazing what you can find out.
what if you could make it? Find out tomorrow on Today on NBC.
The President's State of the Union speech. NBC Nightly News tomorrow.
We're back, and you're looking at an extraordinary scene in southwest England where just offshore a damaged cargo ship is in its last throes, and hundreds of treasure hunters have shown up to pick and choose from among the spoils that are washing up on the beach from the containers. Among the cargo, cars, toys, pet food, cosmetics, camcorders, diapers, and as you saw, a motorcycle, at least one, all of it carted away. It's all perfectly legal as long as people report what they take from the beach. There's also some truly grim news from all of this. The 200 tons of fuel oil leaking out of the ship, which is just off the coast of Devon. Now to a problem a lot of Americans may have noticed lately in their computer inboxes. Suddenly spam, those unwanted, dreaded, maddening emails, the ones promising instant riches, the ones promising cut-rate Viagra, the very ones that seemed to be disappearing for a while are now back, and they're worse than ever. NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis has the story.
At the Cyber Cafe, the cappuccinos are steaming, and so are lots of customers whose computers are clogged with spam, junk email.
I notice if I ever open them, then I end up getting 5 times as many.
If you miss it for 5 days or 25 minutes, you know, that you're going to go into your spam.
And it's getting worse. After some success with software filters that blocked unwanted emails, spam seems to be coming back. According to one study, last year, the amount of spam soared from about 30 billion messages sent a day to 60 billion.
I would say when you put the marks up as to who's winning the war on spam, we have good months and bad months.
What happened? Experts say spammers went back to the drawing board and figured out that using pictures instead of words would get around all the sophisticated technology that was designed to keep your computer safe.
Right now, most software programs that filter spam can't tell the difference between a picture of your grandkid and a picture of a stock tip. So the pictures are getting through where text wouldn't.
Spammers are also evading filters by using quotes from bestsellers like the Harry Potter series, or using headlines from actual news stories cut and pasted together. But there is some progress being made for consumers. Last year, the FTC sued nearly 90 spammers and won.
We've obtained more than $10 million in redress, and we've also obtained civil penalties in excess of several $1 million.
What can consumers do on their own? Experts say update your anti-spam filter software regularly. Be skeptical and delete the spam without ever opening it to avoid wasting time on email you never wanted. Rahima Ellis, NBC News, New York.
Turning to the economy, a tough day at Pfizer. The pharmaceutical giant announced today it will cut 10,000 jobs. That's about 10% of its overall workforce. On Wall Street, the Dow was down by more than 88 points. NASDAQ also down during the day's trading, more than 20 points. Well, if you were watching yesterday and last night, then you know two very different NFL games, one in the snow, the other in the heat of a dome. And when it was over, we learned two things. First, it's going to be the Colts versus the Bears in the Super Bowl. And second, history is being made. Both coaches are African-American, Tony Dungy of Indianapolis and Lovie Smith of Chicago, and that's a first. Take another break. When we come back, coming home, what it's like for our returning veterans these days.
Just like your colds, your child's cold can come with plus aches and pains, so they can have coughs plus an achy body, a stuffy nose plus a throbbing head. But not every children's medicine treats all these symptoms. Children's Tylenol Plus Cold does. It combines effective cold medicines with the doctor-recommended pain relief of children's Tylenol to help you both feel better. Stop. Think. Children's Tylenol Plus Cold.
Millions of people watch me cook, but I watch what I eat. Still, when my doctor checked my cholesterol, it was slightly higher than we'd like. We talked about statins, a good option. For me, he chose Zetia. It works differently. Statins work mainly with the liver. Zetia works in the digestive tract like some other medicines. But Zetia is unique in the way it helps block the absorption of cholesterol that comes from food. Zetia, along with a healthy diet, lowered bad cholesterol by an average of 30 points. That's 18%. It complements what I'm already doing.
Zetia may not be right for people who have ever had liver problems, are nursing or pregnant, or may become pregnant. Your doctor will decide if Zetia is right for you. Unexplained muscle pain or weakness could be a sign of a rare but serious side effect and should be reported to a doctor right away. Common side effects included tiredness and stomach pain.
3, 2. Cook it healthy. Ask your doctor if Zetia is right for you. Zetia, a different way to help fight cholesterol.
I have high blood pressure.
But I was surprised to find out it might lead to erectile dysfunction.
You think you know everything about diabetes, but no one ever told me it could lead to ED.
So I talked to my doctor. He said that certain health conditions like high blood pressure
or diabetes may lead to ED,
and that Levitra can help.
Doctors know Levitra works for men with ED, even those with high blood pressure or diabetes. Levitra is only for men healthy enough for sexual activity. If you have heart problems or are on alpha blocker therapy, talk to your doctor before taking Levitra. Do not take Levitra if you take nitrates for chest pains, as this may cause an unsafe drop in blood pressure. Side effects may include headache, flushing and stuffy or runny nose. To avoid long-term injury, seek immediate medical help if you experience an erection lasting longer than 4 hours. If you have any sudden decrease in vision, stop taking Levitra and call your doctor right away.
Talking to my doctor took a lot off my mind.
You should talk to your doctor about Levitra.
The more you know about ED, the more you'll want to know about Levitra.
Watch the NBC Nightly News Netcast online, free in its entirety. And stay online for the Daily Nightly, a nightly news weblog, only on MSNBC.com.
NBC Tuesday, the State of the Union Address. Join Brian Williams, Tim Russert, and the NBC News team for complete coverage. The State of the Union, Tuesday on NBC.
It was before dawn this morning when a wounded Iraq War veteran named Dan McKinney returned to the job he had left before he went off to fight for this country, and he received a hero's welcome this morning, far different from the one he received when he first returned home from a different war 4 decades ago. Dan McKinney's story starts off this series this week on American men and women coming home. Here is NBC News correspondent Mark Potter.
After a year and a half of medical treatment, Dan McKinney is back on his feet, very lucky to be alive. The 55-year-old McKinney was badly injured in Iraq after being called up by the Army Reserves. While training Iraqi police officers, he took a lunch break just as a suicide bomber struck.
I glanced back down to my food, and the bomb went off.
The lunchroom was obliterated. 2 Americans were killed and 4 seriously injured. McKinney suffered a severe abdominal wound and worried about whether he could ever return to his civilian job as an officer for U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
I looked at this man and I said, boy, I mean, he's in tough shape.
Tom Winkowski is McKinney's boss in Miami. To him, the injuries didn't matter, and he assured McKinney he would always have his job back home.
I felt he needed to know that. I felt he needed to know that we had not forgotten him, that we stood next to him.
That was a huge relief. McKinney could now concentrate on his physical recovery.
The support that he showed from day one was absolutely incredible, far, far beyond anything that I ever imagined.
And a far cry from what McKinney experienced 37 years ago, when he also returned home wounded from service in Vietnam.
People literally screaming obscenities at me in the lobby of Dallas Love Field because I was in the Army.
Now he's been flooded with get well cards.
It's overwhelming. It'll, make you tear up and go through all those emotions that you don't want to admit that you have.
Welcome back. Today, Dan McKinney finally returned to work. A wounded vet from 2 wars, this time enjoying full support. Mark Potter, NBC News, Miami.
That's our broadcast for this Monday night. Thank you for being with us. I'm Brian Williams. We'll look for you tomorrow evening from Washington, followed by our coverage of the President's State of the Union address. Good night.
The global power of CNBC on your computer, anytime, any place. Live network streams and videos on demand. Subscribe to CNBC Plus today.